Welcome back to Orlando and the Republican presidential debate. We're partnering, easy for me to say, with Google and the Florida Republican Party. Now to the topic of foreign policy. And all night we've been showing you these word clouds. Take a look at this one. All the searches on foreign policy, Israel is the biggest word. These are actually the words used in questions. And that brings us to our first question. This week, with the Palestinian efforts at the United Nations, the issue of the future of Israel is a big concern to questioners. In fact, Governor Romney, the next question was a top question voted in the foreign policy section from Yigal Marcus in Teaneck, New Jersey.
As president, how would you approach the new reality in the Middle East, specifically with regards to our ally Israel and the existential threats it faces from Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and now the Palestinian Authority?
Governor Romney.
Very simply, you start off by saying that you don't allow an inch of space to exist between you and your friends and your allies. The president went about this all wrong. He went around the world and apologized for America. He addressed the United Nations in his inaugural address and chastised our friend Israel for building settlements and said nothing about Hamas launching thousands of rockets into Israel. Just before Bibi Netanyahu came to the United States, he threw Israel under the bus, trying to negotiate for Israel. The right course, if you disagree with an ally, you talk about it privately, but in public you stand shoulder to shoulder with your allies. The right course for us is not to try and negotiate for Israel. The right course is to stand behind our friends, to listen to them, and to let the entire world know that we will stay with them and that we will support them and defend them. And with regards to Iran, which perhaps represents the greatest existential threat to Israel, we have to make it abundantly clear. It is unacceptable, and I take that word carefully, it is unacceptable for Iran to become a nuclear nation.
Thank you, Governor Romney. Mr. Kane, this week the Palestinian Authority brought their bid for statehood to the United Nations. How would you respond to the unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state?
It starts with an extension of the Reagan philosophy of peace through strength. My philosophy would extend that to peace through strength and clarity. This administration has not made it clear how it stands with Israel. When I was in Israel last month, I met with the Deputy Prime Minister, and he made it shockingly, chillingly clear that given everything that's going on, number one, Israel will defend itself with all of the tensions going on in the Middle East. And he also made it real clear that he wasn't sure how this administration stood when it came to Israel. I made it clear, which I would also make it clear to all of the other people in the world, that if you mess with Israel, you're messing with the United States of America. We will stand solidly behind Israel. If in fact it was clear to the Palestinians where the United States stood, they might have had second thoughts about trying to pull such a move without negotiating with Israel.
Mr. Kane, thank you. Here's a comparison of searches on Google for Israel, Pakistan, and Afghanistan over the past few years. You can see the lines here. Israel dominates the searches except for a few critical moments in time for Pakistan, which brings us to this. Governor Perry, if you were president and you got a call at 3 a.m. telling you that Pakistan had lost control of its nuclear weapons at the hands of the Taliban, what would be your first move?
Well, obviously, before you ever get to that point, you have to build a relationship in that region. And that's one of the things that this administration has not done. Yesterday, we found out through Admiral Mullen that Haqqani has been involved with, and that's the terrorist group directly associated with the Pakistani country. So to have a relationship with India, to make sure that India knows that they are an ally of the United States. For instance, when we had the opportunity to sell India the upgraded F-16s, we chose not to do that. We did the same thing with Taiwan. The point is, our allies need to understand clearly that we are their friends. We will be standing by there with them. Today, we don't have those allies in that region that can assist us if that situation that you talked about were to become a reality.
Senator Santorum, if the security situation were to fall apart in Iraq in 2012, would you support sending U.S. troops back to the region to stabilize the gains made?
I'm not for taking them out of the region. I believe that we need to listen to our generals, and our generals are very, very clear that we need to continue to stabilize the Iraqi government wants and needs our intelligence in particular, needs force protection. We need to have anywhere, I'm hearing numbers of 20, 30,000 troops potentially to remain in Iraq, not indefinitely, but to continue to make sure that this is a stable transition. This is the difference between Congressman Paul, Governor Huntsman, Governor Perry, and myself when it comes to this issue. I stand up and say that when we engage in Iraq and Afghanistan, we engage because we want to be successful. We want victory. We want to have accomplished a national security objective for this country, to make sure that we are safer. We're not on a political agenda to withdraw troops. So the first thing is to make sure that we secure success. To answer the question on Pakistan, which I'm not too sure was answered, the bottom line is that we should be establishing relationships in Pakistan with allies of ours, folks like relationships with President Musharraf, who we had in the past, with others in that country. So if in fact something like that would occur, we could work in concert to make sure that coup could be overturned and make sure that those nuclear weapons do not fall into those hands. But working with allies at that point is the last thing we want to do. We want to work in that country to make sure that the problem is diffused.
Speaker Gingrich, many of the foreign policy questions we received had directly to do with the U.S. economy as well when it came to the topic of foreign aid. Butch Russell had the top voted video question in the section of foreign policy.
When are we going to get someone in the White House that can stand up to these other countries and say, you're not getting any more of our money? This is stupid. We send billions of dollars overseas to countries that hate us.
Speaker Gingrich.
I actually think there's a lot to that, and I've been a strong supporter of international assistance, but I think there are a couple of good reasons to review the whole program. First of all, I'd replace virtually all government-to-government aid with some kind of investment approach that encouraged American companies to create jobs that made both the United States and the other country wealthier. Our bureaucrats giving their bureaucrats money is a guaranteed step towards corruption. Second, I think when you have countries that vote against you in the United Nations consistently, you really have to ask yourself, why are you giving them anything? I mean, if they're not your ally, why are you have a... We came out of World War II with the generosity that made perfect sense when we had 50% of the world economy. And it was a different world. And we need to understand how different it is. But I want to go back to your question on Pakistan, because I think people need to understand how real this is. This world is in danger of becoming dramatically more dangerous in the not-too-distant future. People talk about an Iranian weapon. There may be well over 100 nuclear weapons in Pakistan, and the example you used is not too far-fetched to worry about.
Speaker Gingrich, thank you. Governor Johnson, here in Florida, charter flights from Fort Lauderdale to Havana, Cuba have resumed. Is there a problem with that, and what are your thoughts on U.S.-Cuba policy?
I think the biggest threat to our national security is the fact that we're bankrupt. So I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013, and included in that is a 43% reduction in military spending. I think it's crazy that we have foreign aid to countries when we're borrowing 43 cents out of every dollar to do that. Military alliances are really key to other countries taking up the slack. With regard to flights to Cuba, I'm in favor, I think, of the whole notion that trade promotes friendship as opposed to not. So I would be inclined to looking at establishing or supporting those kinds of flights.
Governor Johnson, thank you.
Excuse me, Brett. Could I weigh in on this?
Congresswoman Bachmann.
I'd like to weigh in on this because according to the State Department's website, there are 4 nations that are state sponsors of terror. Cuba is one of those nations. We would never have flights between the United States and Cuba. It's a state sponsor of terror.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Now to my colleague, Megyn Kelly, on the topic of social issues.
Governor Huntsman.
Just one issue. I just want to respond to my friend Rick Santorum here. Is the microphone working?
It is.
Thank you. We do have a difference of opinion here in terms of overall foreign policy. And I think, as the only one on stage with any hands-on foreign policy experience, having lived overseas 4 different times, we're at a critical juncture in our country. We don't have a foreign policy, and we don't project the goodness of this country in terms of liberty, democracy, open markets, and human rights with the weak core. And right now in this country, our core, our economy is broken. And we don't shine that light today. We're 25% of the world's GDP. The world is a better place when the United States is strong. So guiding anything that we talk about from a foreign policy standpoint needs to be fixing our core. But second of all, I believe that after 10 years of fighting the war on terror, people are ready to bring our troops home from Afghanistan, Rick. They're ready to bring our troops home. This country has given its all.
Governor Huntsman.
What remains behind, some element to collect intelligence, special forces capability, and we're going to have to do that in every corner of the world. But we need to fix this core and get serious about what the rest of the 21st century holds for this country.
Senator Santorum, very quickly.
Just because our economy is sick does not mean our country is sick. It doesn't mean our values are sick. And we're going to stand up for those values every opportunity to do so to make sure that our country is safe. The bottom line is that you just mentioned is we should be fighting wars to win, not fighting wars for politics. And this president is fighting a war in Afghanistan with one hand tied behind our generals, not giving the troops they need, not giving the authority, the rules of engagement to allow us to be successful. And unless we change those rules of engagement and make sure that our folks can win, then we are going to play politics with our military.
This may not come as a huge revelation. We've been talking about Pakistan here, but at the end of the day, folks, only Pakistan can save Pakistan. Only Afghanistan can save Afghanistan. Yeah. All that I want right now at this point in history is for America to save America. We've got to fix our core and get it right.
Thank you very much. Now, as I originally said, Megyn Kelly on social issues.
And now I'm moving on from you, Governor Huntsman, to you, Congresswoman Bachmann. In 2006, you said that public schools are, quote, teaching children that there is separation of church and state, and said, quote, I am here to tell you that's a myth.